anyone who is not an initiate and a submissive. But I want to tell you that there is much more to human sacrifice than you think. First, the life force of the victim has got to be drunk. Then, after the victim has been in your bed for a number of days or weeks or months, then she must be told that she's going to die. And she must be encouraged to try to escape. And she must be made to run. Run in a direction where you know there are people who will recapture her. When she is recaptured, she will have a particular smell on her, which is like that of an animal. You know, Mr. David, this may shock you as a white person, but I want to tell you this fact. Human sacrifice is much more than just cutting the throat of a victim. A long procedure is followed before you drink the energy of this young person. A virgin girl radiates a severe heat, which is sometimes used by my people to save the life of a man or a woman who has been caught on a cold mountainside. You know, in Zululand, snow sometimes falls on the Ubundi mountains and other mountains. And sometimes you find that a man of importance has been caught in the terrible cold, and he is close to freezing to death. And the quickest way to save this man is to place him and a virgin girl on the same bed. The heat of the girl and the life force of the girl will actually bring this man back to life. Now, in human sacrifice, all over Africa and all over Europe, I know the life force of the victim-to-be is first absorbed in various ways. And one way of absorbing the life force of a human, a girl, is to frighten her very much, and then to take her intimate garment, such as her loincloth or painting, and to smell it. Through that, you absorb some of the life force of the girl. And then she must be frightened until great fear builds up inside. She must be made to know that she is going to die. And under very ritual conditions, the person is killed. But she is killed slowly. And her screaming is forbidden. She mustn't scream. A tight piece of wax is often jammed into between the victim's jaws, a piece which she cannot swallow, and then she is killed. But wait, there is more, much more to this bizarre thing. The victim must bless you with her eyes as she dies. Sometimes the victim must be made to talk before he dies, which is why I was so horrified when I learned from various newspapers that after her terrible accident, Princess Diana had talked. That is how a human sacrifice victim is expected to do. She must talk. There is some kind of power that she releases by talking, which again benefits those whose victim she is.
I'm convinced that she was ritually sacrificed.
Yes, sir. And here is another thing. Sir. When the victim, the more beautiful a victim is, the more you are supposed to stare at her, all of you. And when the victim dies, when she struggles in her last pain, all of you involved there, no matter how old you may be, ejaculate. Males or females, ejaculate. You must. Otherwise the magic will not work.
So this is why you get, one of the reasons you get sexual activity so much involved in some of these rituals.
Aha, yes. It is because as the victim dies, you feel such a great pity for her, such a love. She's a beautiful vessel being broken. And you feel the forces of rejuvenation coursing through your veins. You know, sir, this could be the reason why people who indulge in this form of ritual actually live for so long. But what is horrible is that the victim does not have to die in order to help her captor to extend his earthly life. Simply by lying in bed with the victim unmolested, month after month, actually rejuvenates the person in power. What I'm saying to you, sir, is something that was practiced all over Africa by some of our greatest kings. The captive girls were not killed. And I wish to point out another thing. May I? The people of Israel practiced this strange custom. And King Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor, who lived for well over 80 years, used to practice this custom of sleeping side by side with young virgins whom he did not, however, mate with.
He was one of the creators of Christianity, right?
Now, let me tell you, sir, there is a name for this thing. Month after month, actually rejuvenates the person in power. What I'm saying to you, sir, is something that was practiced all over Africa by some of our greatest kings. The captive girls were not killed. And I wish to point out another thing. May I? The people of Israel practiced this strange custom. And King Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor, who lived for well over 80 years, used to practice this custom of sleeping side by side with young virgins whom he did not, however, mate with.
He was one of the creators of Christianity. Right?
Now, let me tell you something. There is a name for this thing. In fact, the name is also in the Bible. It is called Shulamitism. In the Song of Songs of Solomon, the male singer repeatedly refers to the woman as his Shulamit. And a Shulamit is a woman who is brought especially to rejuvenate a dying person of importance. Quote the Bible. And a woman was brought unto him, and she lay with him, but yourself will dissipate. You must lie with the victim. Usually she is blindfolded, and you must embrace her and hold her and try to symbolically swallow her, to try to draw from her the most important essence of herself. I'm sorry, I don't have the proper English to say this. Do you understand what I'm trying to say, sir?
Yeah, absolutely.
Your body must be moistened with fragrant oil, and so the body of the victim to be. And you must embrace this victim for a number of days.
You trying to make a vibrational connection with them? Is that what
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. In fact, I can tell you, kings and Inyangas and Sangomas who lived well beyond their 100th year by simply taking a young virgin person, whether male or female, and lying with him or her in a ritual bed without any sexual penetration whatsoever. This is the key to true immortality, sir. This, I am telling you now, something which I am not allowed to tell anyone who is not an initiate and a Pharisee. But I want to tell you that there is much more to human sacrifice than you think. First, the life force of the victim has got to be drunk. Then, after the victim has been in your bed for a number of days or weeks or months, then she must be told that she's going to die. And she must be encouraged to try to escape. And she must be made to run. Run in a direction where you know there are people who will recapture her. When she is recaptured, she will have a particular smell on her, which is like that of an animal. You know, Mr. David, this may shock you as a white person, but I want to tell you this fact. Human sacrifice is much more than just cutting the throat of a victim. A long procedure is followed before you drink the energy of this young person. A virgin girl radiates a severe heat, which is sometimes used by my people to save the life of a man or a woman who has been caught on a cold mountainside. You know, in Zululand, snow sometimes falls on the Ubundi mountains and other mountains. And sometimes you find that a man of importance has been caught in the terrible cold, and he is close to freezing to death. And the quickest way to save this man is to place him and a virgin girl on the same bed. The heat of the girl and the life force of the girl will actually bring this man back to life. Now, in human sacrifice, all over Africa and all over Europe, I know the life force of the victim-to-be is first absorbed in various ways. And one way, say, of absorbing the life force of a human, a girl, is to frighten her very much, and then to take her intimate garment, such as her loincloth or painting, and to smell it. Through that, you absorb some of the life force of the girl. And then she must be frightened until great fear builds up inside her. She must be made to know that she is going to die. And under very ritual conditions, the person is killed. But she is killed slowly. And her screaming is forbidden. She mustn't scream. A tight piece of wax is often jammed into between the victim's jaws, a piece which she cannot swallow, and then she is killed. But wait, there is more, much, much more to this bizarre thing. The victim must bless you with her eyes as she dies. Sometimes the victim must be made to talk before she dies, which is why I was so horrified when I learned from various newspapers that after her terrible accident, Princess Diana had talked. That is how a human sacrifice victim is expected to do. She must talk. There is some kind of power that she releases by talking, which again benefits those whose victim she is.
I'm convinced that she was ritually sacrificed.
Yes, sir. And here is another thing, sir. When the victim, the more beautiful a victim is, the more you are supposed to stare at her, all of you. And when the victim dies, when she struggles in her last pain, all of you involved there, no matter how old you may be, ejaculate. Males or females, ejaculate. You must. Otherwise the magic will not work.
So this is why you get, one of the reasons you get sexual activity so much involved in some of these rituals.
Aha, yes. It is because as the victim dies, you feel such a great pity for her, such a love. She's a beautiful vessel being broken. And you feel the forces of rejuvenation coursing through your veins. You know, sir, this could be the reason why people who indulge in this form of ritual actually live for so long. But what is horrible is that the victim does not have to die in order to help her captor to extend his earthly life. Simply by lying in bed with the victim unmolested, month after month, actually rejuvenates the person in power. What I'm saying to you, sir, is something that was practiced all over Africa by some of our greatest kings. The captive girls were not killed. And I wish to point out another thing. May I? The people of Israel practiced this strange custom. And King Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor, who lived for well over 80 years, used to practice this custom of sleeping side by side with young virgins whom he did not, however, mate with.
He was one of the creators of Christianity. Right?
Now, let me tell you, sir, there is a name for this thing. In fact, the name is also in the Bible. It is called Shulamitism. In the Song of Songs of Solomon, the male singer repeatedly refers to the woman as his Shulamit. And a Shulamit is a woman who is brought especially to rejuvenate a dying person of importance. Quote the Bible. And a woman was brought unto him, and she lay with him, but he get no heed. Sometimes, for a parent, a mother or a father, to sacrifice his own child is an act of self-rejuvenation. I often view with a very deep suspicion the story of Jacob, of Isaac, whose father had been ordered by the Lord to sacrifice him. You remember?
Abraham.
Yeah. Was Abraham trying to rejuvenate himself? My answer is yes. Because sacrificing your own offspring releases forces within you which can actually make you young again. Now, sir, this is one of the reasons why child abuse is today so prevalent throughout the world. I have spoken many times to men who have raped their own daughters. I have spoken many times to women who have abused their own sons. And they give me the same answer. Each time I do it, I feel good.
And this would explain why so many of this Illuminati are into pedophilia. I mean, people like George Bush is infamous for it. And all over the world, phenomenal numbers of children go missing every month, more than anyone ever realizes. And surely this, in some way, is massively connected into this subject we're talking about. And presumably in Africa, the same phenomena of missing children goes on.
Exactly, sir, yes. At our meeting last night, do you remember the white lady I pointed out to you, saying that this is a white lady who has a great story to tell? Her name is Madam Hannah Otterman. She is the mother of a Spanish-speaking girl who was hired by an Afrikaans language magazine called Huisgenoot in order to trace several children who disappeared mysteriously in South Africa. I also was involved in attempts to trace these children, most of whom were white and some of whom were black. All these children had one characteristic in common. They were either budding psychics or they were leaders in sports and other subjects in their particular school. And they were not chosen at random. They were carefully selected by someone. One day, a white friend of mine prevailed upon me to try and trace one of the missing children. The child had been kidnapped earlier that day, and the news had come on the radio. And I was able to sit in a dark place and to concentrate fiercely on the photograph of the missing child. And I saw her being driven together with two others in the boot of a car. And sometime later, that car, which was driven by 4 men, 3 white and 1 of Hindu appearance, stopped somewhere in the veld, and the children were brought out of the boot of the car. But one of the children, the very child we were seeking, had become very, very ill because of lack of air. And this child we followed in spirit. We found her that she was being taken along a highway that goes into Natal from the north. And then she was taken along that highway until her captors reached the coast. And there she died, and I clearly saw her body being buried in sea sand. What happened to the other 2 children, I do not know. But I can tell you that after that, I totally refused to get involved in this terrible thing. Why? Because I had seen in visions the faces of the leaders of the satanic kidnapping of children. And some of these leaders were men whose names were very big in South Africa indeed.
How many children go missing in Africa, say, every month?
I learned from a gentleman with a very logical mind, a gentleman who later told me that he was a Freemason, or he is a Freemason, that well over 4,000 children disappear in South Africa every month.
When you were talking earlier about human sacrifice and longevity, it's quite a thought, the number of Illuminati people who have come up in my research again and again, who live remarkably long lives. People that come to mind, not just long lives, but fit lives for most of it. One that comes to mind immediately is Henry Kissinger and George Bush. And then, although she's getting frail now, the Queen Mother in England, these are people that come up in my research, and they live long lives. It's quite a coincidence.
You know, sir, in this life there is no such a thing as a coincidence.
I know.
These people like these, somehow rejuvenate themselves. I do not want to know exactly how. But when you see a man like Dr. Kissing, a man who seems to be a very rock of immortality, a man who has changed little since the days of the Second World War. The man who was the leader of this man, named President Eisenhower, is dead long ago, but Kissinger is still alive, going strong. I would like to point out a very interesting thing to you, sir, that in black communities, especially nowadays, people of extreme old age who still remain active in spite of their old age become targets of witch hunters. They become victims of witchcraft killers. My stepmother is today 98 years old. And at one time, a group of young religious fanatics wanted to kill her as a witch because she was so old and had never been sick.
Does it frustrate you, Kredо, when you look across this history of Africa that we're talking about to the present day, at how at times the black people of Africa have allowed themselves to be manipulated so often easily?
Yes, sir. It makes my heart to bleed, but at the same time, this is one of the proofs of the fact that in this world, we are not the masters of our own destiny. This is one of the proofs that in this world, we are controlled by forces far greater and far more ancient than we are. Nations are caught by these creatures, whoever they are, at a time of weakness. Nations are caught at a time when they are either emerging from major wars or at a time when people are coming together to form a new nation or a new tribe or a new clan. And that is where the terrible cheetah will catch them.
You've had a remarkable life, not least because of the horrendous things that have happened to you. But there was one story you told me about what happened, I think it was in Soweto,
Yes.
which encapsulates not just how easy it is to manipulate black people, but how easy it is to manipulate all people, because this is how it happens. When a journalist misquoted you and people believed it, could you tell us that story?
The story is very simple, sir, and my life is just an ordinary life. First of all, after the Soweto unrest of 1976, all of us who had been supervisors in various municipality installations which had been damaged during the unrest were called before a judge in Pretoria. The name of the judge was Justice Seli. Seli wanted all of us to give him a clear report of what we had seen take place and how the installations we were the supervisors of had been destroyed during the unrest. many people were afraid of speaking at this inquiry, which was called the Sebi inquiry. And we were promised that our names would remain anonymous. But when the inquiry was on, I noticed reporters at the inquiry in a place where they were not supposed to be. If the inquiry was to be held in camera, why then were there reporters there? And amongst the reporters was a white woman, Helen Zille. Now, I spoke to the judge, answering his question. And then I said to the judge, protection for workers in Soweto is completely inadequate. Innocent workers are being beaten up and sometimes killed by the rioting youths. Can't more protection be supplied to those of our people who are willing to work? And this white woman went on to write in the Rand Daily newspaper that I had said that the army should be called into Soweto to quell the unrest. Now, here was a white woman defying the orders of a judge, breaking the law with impunity almost. Of all the people who testified in that case, some of whom said worse things than I said, only my name was betrayed. And after that, my home was attacked by 500 or more school children. It happened in September 1976. My wife was raped. My children were beaten and injured. How they managed to escape, I don't know. And I was stoned and stabbed many times. And when I was lying on the ground, completely helpless, petrol was thrown over me. And that was when I knew fear. Because we African people believe that if you are burnt to death, not only is your body consumed by the flames, but your soul is destroyed as well. We believe that although a human being possesses an immortal soul within him or her, that soul can be destroyed by fire. How I escaped from that Holocaust, I do not know. Something must have frightened these children. They all ran away and left me lying in my blood at the back of my house. And not a single one of the many neighbors I had, many of whom I had helped years before and weeks and months before with loans of money and gifts of food, not one of them moved to help me at that time. I was taken, I managed to crawl to a municipality yard, and there I hid in a corrugated iron shack until nightfall. And then a man came to see me there, and this man drove away a gunman who had come in there, into that yard, to finish me off. And this man took me through a hole in the fence to the house of a Sangoma who is one of my followers. And that Sangoma, at great risk to her life, hid me under her bed until the police came to take me out of there. I was covered with wounds, and a broken knife was lodged in my body. And somebody had tried to cut off these two fingers. This is where the knife went in, and here it came out. After that, we hid in the backyard of a police station. And after that, my immediate superior, a white gentleman who is a horticulturist, smuggled me out of Soweto with my family and took me to Natal, and where I stayed for over a year recovering from my injuries.
And all this, Kreddo, is from one journalist,
yes,
a white journalist during apartheid,
yes, sir,
saying you said something you didn't say.
Yes, sir.
Now,
and
what does that say about how easy it is to manipulate people? I mean, you must have been frustrated beyond belief.
sir, let me tell you, Mr. Ike, that the enemies of humankind, the Chitauli, or whatever it is we choose to call them, have in newspapers a devastating weapon, a weapon for which there is no answer. Using a newspaper, they can lash out at anyone, knowing that that victim cannot fight back.
Kreddo, what's the agenda for Africa now? We've told a long story. We're in the modern world, we're looking ahead. What's the agenda of the Illuminati Chitahuli for Africa and the world, come to that?
It appears that from what I see happening all over Africa, that the Chitauli are depopulating or destroying those countries in Africa which, left to themselves, could become the bread baskets of this continent. The Sudan is being destroyed. Angola has been obliterated. Mozambique has been destroyed. But wait, the countries as such have not been destroyed. Only their populations have been obliterated or brought to the edge of extermination. Why? What do these creatures want? I feel that the answer says they want to alter human society by wiping out certain races of humankind and leaving others alive. I think that Africa is being depopulated deliberately in order to enable the future dictators of this world to get at Africa's minerals without bothering to pay anyone for those minerals. In other words, the minerals of various countries, things which appear more important to the Chitauli than human lives, are being cleared so that they can be, continents are being cleared, countries are being cleared of people, so that people, whoever will be in power afterwards, will be able to have access to Africa's huge oil, coal, uranium, gold, and diamond deposits without having to pay any African ruler for those minerals. In other words, we are reaching a point where the minerals that come out of the ground will become the property not of small nations like Africa and the many nations that are inside there, but of the huge global government which is on the cards and which is being built now.
Is that why so much violence, both individual violence on the streets and between tribes, between groups and between countries is going on?
Yes, sir. People, it seems to me that it is the decision of the Chitauri to accelerate the destruction of as many human lives as possible. At the same time, to leave the minerals as well as other natural resources intact for the future rulers of the world to consume. I view, sir, with great unease a phenomenon which has been gaining ground in Africa in recent years. There has been planned and actually built in several parts of Africa things which are called peace parks, huge game reserves which border on certain countries. For example, the Kruger National Park in the Eastern Transvaal borders on Mozambique. And now I understand that the Kruger National Park is to be duplicated, this time in Mozambique, which is very interesting indeed, in that where the new duplicate park is going to be established, it is one of the areas where, especially during the Rhodesian War, some of the heaviest, deadliest fighting and massive dispersion of tribespeople actually took place.
And there are a lot of game parks down the Rwandan border and other countries like that where people came in to cause the problems there in the genocide.
Yes, sir. It's very strange. Somebody, I think, I don't know who, and quite frankly, I don't want to know. Because it's no use talking about an enemy you cannot throw a weapon at. I don't know who is planning this thing, but these game parks are being established at a huge price, a huge cost in human lives. These game parks are being established at the expense of the nations in whose countries the parks are. Why? Not only that, while Africans allow themselves to be manipulated by these enemies of humankind, while Africans fly at each other's throats like enraged hawks, there are specially trained men and women who are being infiltrated into the warring African countries and who continue mining Africa's minerals as if there was no war taking place. And these minerals are being taken out of these countries in huge convoys of heavy vehicles. I've seen this several times. While the war in Southwest Africa, Namibia, was being fought, there was a huge smuggling of minerals such as diamonds, and so on. The same is happening in Angola. The same is happening elsewhere.
The name that comes up, of course, in terms of so many environmental parks or game parks, there are United Nations agencies that speak for themselves. But there's also so-called environmental groups like the Worldwide Fund for Nature. What's your feeling about the way the environmental movement is being operated? The Worldwide Fund for Nature, of course, is headed by Prince Philip, of whom I would certainly not buy a used car from him, and Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, his friend, two of the bloodlines.
Since that fund was established, African animals are being exterminated at an even greater rate, believe me. In the Eastern Transvaal, some farmers have broken down fences between their farms and have made their private game parks into one huge thing. But when you go into these game parks and you get off the vehicle and you walk a short distance by foot, you notice a very disturbing thing. One, you see no recent animal tracks anywhere around you. Two, you cannot smell animals, and yet if a game park is filled with animals anywhere in Africa, you can actually smell the animals. You can smell the giraffe, the buffalo. You can smell the large antelopes. Each one has its particular smell. But if you go to those places in the Eastern Transvaal, you don't smell animals, let alone see them. There is shooting of wild game in those supposedly protected places like there is no tomorrow. And furthermore, in some of these private game reserves, you see something that fills you with disquiet. You see airstrips carrying not small aeroplanes as one would expect, not small one-engined aeroplanes, but I have seen game reserves where there is an airstrip and a hangar which carries a large aircraft, a Dakota of the 1950s. What is a gamekeeper doing with a heavy aircraft like that?
What do you think the agenda of the Worldwide Fund for Nature is?
I think that it's an exercise in cynicism, an exercise in utter hypocrisy. And it doesn't surprise me that the leader of this fraud is a man whose eyes are like those of a reptile, a man whose lips look as if they were sculptured with a cutthroat razor.
What is the answer, Kredо? What do people need to do to stop this agenda becoming reality and to turn it? Round and create the kind of world we want to live in?
Sir, I do not have any ready-made answers to your question, but I will tell you this. Our first duty is to make the whole world, the whole of humanity, aware of the threat facing it. Such is the blind spot in our brains that when people threaten us publicly that they are going to exterminate us and our entire nation, we don't take them seriously. For example, this threat to Africa is visible to everyone with a little thought, but it is so monstrous, so huge and so fearsome that our conditioned minds refuse to accept this. Now, in England, there is a deadly-looking animal which I once saw. That animal is really a little wizard or a witch. It is a sleek animal whose body is very flexible. The English people call it a stoat.
Stoat.
Yeah, a stoat. Now, when that animal chases a rabbit and corners it, the rabbit stops and freezes, and it looks at the stoat with totally hypnotized eyes. It is as if this animal is refusing to see the stoat, and the stoat catches it and eats it. We are reacting exactly like that. This is the way the Illuminati want us to react, to be hypnotized by their supposed power, to become blind to their existence, exactly as a cornered rabbit refuses to see a stoat. It doesn't want to see it because it cannot handle what is standing before it. We are like that. And we must stop this stoaty mentality. We must understand that there will come a time when the damage will have become so great, will have gone so far that we will not be able to reverse it. But I believe in this power, sir, of the great African proverb that goes, Mudimu uphala baloi. God is greater than all the wizards and sorcerers on this earth. And I know that if as many people as possible are aware of what the Chitauli are doing, the Chitauli will be forced to retreat. Already, there are signs that they are getting desperate. Why? Because the human being is trying to bring out the God within itself. We are trying to become gods, and we are succeeding. It's only a few decades ago when there was no one on this earth who knew or cared anything about animal conservation, who knew or cared anything about the protection of the environment, But today, friends, there are thousands of such people worldwide. It is a hopeful sign, a sign that should be encouraged. Let the power of light shine in the dark corners of conspiracy, and as it shines, let humankind be saved.
Credo Mutwa, the most remarkable man, it's been my privilege to meet. And when you look at Credo Mutwa, you're looking at an unbelievable example of the true power of the human spirit. His life has been a series of astonishing challenges from the moment he was born, right to today, as threats on his life continue, threats to his wife's life continue, and these challenges would have broken the spirit. Just a few of them would have broken the spirit of most other people on this planet, but they've not broken him. Here he is talking to you, revealing information that has largely never been revealed before through these sources, because the pressure on him has been to keep quiet, keep the secrets. But as Credo said, Africa is dying. As a place of freedom, the earth is dying. It's time for people to know. Now, this man has got the guts to stand up and speak out, despite condemnation from virtually all sides. So what are we going to do? Are we going to say, oh, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, Credo Mutwa is interesting, you know. Light a candle. Or dismiss it. Oh, he's just a witch doctor. He's got nothing to say. In other words, are we going to find some excuse now to do nothing? To sit on our backsides and think someone else will do it, or there's nothing we can do? Or are we going to express the spirit that this guy is expressing? Because if we do, this whole house of cards of global control is going to fall. It's going to be brought down by the wind of change that we will create. Or if we walk away and think there's nothing we can do, we're just powerless people, what could we do? Oh my God. Or dismiss what he says or whatever. Then that house of cards is going to solidify, because we're holding it together still. And we're going to live in a global fascist state. Not some distant time in the future. Oh my goodness me, it's going to be terrible for the kids. Now, in our lifetimes. We're going to go on fighting each other. We're going to go on being divided and ruled because someone else has got a different religion to us. Oh my goodness, call the police. Someone's got a different color to us. Someone's got a different creed to us. Someone's got a different spin on life than us. We're going to go on doing that. Because if we are, we deserve to be in a global fascist state. Because we are acting in our own lives as individual fascists against those around us that don't share our view. We can unite on what we, I hope, believe in. Freedom. We can celebrate the diversity of human expression, of human ability, of the human sense of reality, the way we see the same thing in so many different ways. We can celebrate the diversity of race, the diversity of all things in this glorious web of life we call creation. And if we do that, we will not agree. Fair enough, what a boring state anyway. But we will have harmony, and therefore we will have peace via respect for each other. And the Illuminati, the Chittahuli, whatever name you want to give them, can't stand harmony, because harmony is a nightmare to manipulate. Disharmony and conflict is a piece of cake. Are we going on playing the game according to the rules of the Illuminati, fighting each other, cussing each other, blaming each other? Or are we going to decide that we're going to play games with different rules? Games that have unwritten laws called love, called respect, called harmony, called peace. We have got ourselves into this state, and that's the truth. And that's good news. We have got ourselves in this state. by making decisions to give our minds away and insist that everyone else does the same. We can therefore make choices that will bring this manipulation to an end, almost like that, by taking our power back to think for ourselves and giving everyone else the honor to do the same. Are we going to choose love in its true sense, or are we going to choose fear? The choice is ours. It always has been. And the consequences for one or the other, in terms of our future, are immensely, immensely different. Kredо Mutwa has shown the kind of spirit necessary to bring an end to this nonsense. If the rest of humanity shows a fraction of that, we have got nothing to concern ourselves with, because this world is going to change from a prison to a paradise. It's just a choice. I know which one I'm going to make. How about you? Hope you've got something out of it. Thanks for watching.